I've isolated 5 teams I think will have be pretty bad and in competition for the number 1 overall pick. One's obviously Vegas, Colorado, Vancouver, New Jersey, Arizona. I'd even throw Detroit in there. Any of those 6, and you go, I'm not so sure. They maybe they won't flirt with the playoffs, but they won't be as bad as we think they will be.
I think Arizona is a much improved team. Like, I'm with you on all those teams. You know, I think one of the great questions going into the season is who's going to be worse, Vegas or Colorado? And I think it's a legitimate question, and there's no guarantee that Colorado is going to be better than the expansion
And do you
team.
not think Vancouver and Detroit will be as bad as those 2 teams?
I don't know if they'll be as bad. I mean, Vancouver certainly has a shot at it. I still think there's enough. Detroit gets the goaltending. They're not going to make the playoffs. This is not a playoff team, but I just don't see them in Rasmus Dahlin, Andrei Svechnikov territory quite yet. But we'll see what the season brings. I still think there's too much with. I mean, Zetterberg had an outstanding season last year. We'll see who ends up bouncing back if Dylan Larkin can turn it around as he plays center now. But I see that Vegas and Colorado, they're really 1 and 2 in that turtle race, and shortly after that is Vancouver. The interesting point out of all of it is I don't think anyone's counting Arizona out of making a playoffs now. When you look at what they've done, the way they were able to fleece the Chicago Blackhawks and get Nicholas Chalmerson to do almost something similar to the Florida Panthers and pick up Jason Demers. As everybody says, it's impossible to get a top 4 defenseman. John Chaiko went out this summer and got 2 of them. So maybe all of a sudden you start to look at the Coyotes and say they have an outside chance to make the playoffs here. They've done a really good job addressing issues. They have the netminder. That's a question mark. Derek Stepan comes in as a number 1 center. That's going to help. Mm-hmm. We'll see what Clayton Keller, Dylan Strome can do. I think one of the interesting questions there is that Arizona is no longer in that conversation for people.
Talking hockey with Jeff Marek, host NHL and CHL on Sportsnet. We saw the Ottawa Senators last night against the Leafs, and I don't think there's been a team that has made the National Hockey League Conference Finals that is less respected than Ottawa is going into this season here. They'll be without Karlsson for a while, and yet I know it was just one preseason game last night, but they did make it to the conference final last year. They must have some talent. Why are they so dissed?
Because they overperformed in just about every single category. When you break it down and you have a look at the numbers behind the numbers, this is every year there's that classic team. It was Colorado a number of years ago. It was Minnesota. It was Maple Leafs after the lockout run and losing in 7 games to the Boston Bruins. There are always some teams that overperform by way of shooting percentage and save percentage and then come back down to the pack the next season. And everybody this year is pointing at the Ottawa Senators. Way overperformed at just about every single position by their underlying numbers. And everyone's saying these guys are due for a crash. Not to say that there's not a lot of talent and a lot of skill on that team. Outside of Karlsson, still don't love the back end. Anderson continues to get another year older, although he seems to just be getting better every season for some bizarre reason. I think everyone's ready for the Ottawa crash. They were the underdogs in I think every single series they played last year, and all they did was take out the Habs and the Rangers and almost took out the Pittsburgh Penguins, or Boston Bruins rather than the Pittsburgh Penguins. They probably should get more respect, but everyone looks at the underlying numbers, I think, and says these guys are ready for a fall. Not unlike Toronto years ago, not unlike Minnesota, and not unlike Colorado.